From Kansas State University, this is Agriculture Today. Eric Atkinson with you. Here's what's coming up. K-State's Anthony Zukoff will talk about a promising biological approach to corn rootworm control that's starting to gain traction, deploying a specific type of nematode that feeds on rootworm larvae in cornfields without harming the crop. How it works will be the subject of a special informational webinar coming up soon. Also, K-State's Joel DeRouchey will preview several of the topics that will headline the 2022 K-State Swine Profitability Conference next Tuesday here on the campus. And on this week's horticulture segment, K-State's Gregg Eyestone with more recommendations on succeeding with starting garden transplants from seed. All that right here on Agriculture Today. Thanks for tuning in. You're listening to Agriculture Today. You corn producers have long been engaged in battle with the corn rootworm. It's a notorious insect pest in corn production, has been here in Kansas and elsewhere where corn is grown in this country. There's a new concept that's out there as far as controlling the corn rootworm, and it's going to be the subject of a special informational webinar hosted by K-State Research and Extension later this month. Along with us now to tell us about what's being proposed as an alternative control and about the webinar itself is Anthony Zukoff. Anthony is an Extension Associate in entomology for K-State, based in southwest Kansas. Anthony, you're acquainted as well with the rootworm. It's been a long-standing problem for growers, hasn't it?
Yeah, that's true. So currently there's a variety of resistance issues going on in the Corn Belt across the United States in regards to corn rootworm control. So there's field evolved resistance to all the commercially available BT traits that are out there right now. So that's obviously causing a lack of control of larvae below ground. But above ground, there's been the evolution of resistance to products used to control adult rootworms. So that's an issue. And then some folks might even be familiar with the fact that in some areas, there's even rootworm populations that are resistant to rotation practices. So quite a few challenges to control rootworm lately.
With all of that going on, at present, what are producers left to do as far as the rootworm issue?
Yeah, so a good thing to point out is that these resistance issues aren't like a completely widespread blanket throughout the corn growing region. So there are areas where BT technologies are still working fine. But some of the biggest tools that producers have is really going back to rotation. That was one of the easiest ways to mitigate losses from this pest for a long time. But of course, continuous corn is popular and it's very common. So even in continuous corn, you can practice rotation techniques. So you can rotate your BT varieties, right? You don't want to use the same BT season after season. So that's what's kind of led to some of these resistance issues. But then also producers can rotate from BT to a non-BT hybrid and use soil-applied insecticide at the time of planting. And that kind of creates what they call a temporal refuge to help with managing resistance.
Still, there's an idea that's been brought out, and a colleague of yours at another land-grant university is actually responsible for developing it. This is a naturally occurring nematode, is that correct?
That's correct. So, so these nematodes are naturally occurring in the environment in a lot of areas in the country. So they're a native nematode. And so when we think about nematodes, a lot of people associate them with plant production issues because there are a lot of nematodes that are pests, right? But these nematodes that are being used for rootworm control are obligate parasites of insects, soil insects. So these nematodes are seeking out and attacking only insects in the soil profile. And they're not causing any problems to plants at all.
And that gives rise to this idea and its potential here. Talk more about the activity of these nematodes in the soil. They go right after the rootworm larvae.
Correct, yeah. And so these nematodes, and they're not specific just to rootworm larvae. So in fact, they actually were first being used in New England to control alfalfa snout beetle larvae, which is also a below ground pest of alfalfa. And so they're using these nematodes and having great success with that. And then later on, they realized after rotating to corn that there was still nematode activity in the field, and they posited that it was likely that the nematodes were persisting on corn rootworm larvae, and that's what led to all of this. But not just those two pests, these nematodes will seek out a multitude of species that develop in the soil, and so that allows them to persist in the environment over very long periods of time, even if you're rotating out of corn or alfalfa or what have you.
Sounds encouraging, and the webinar will get into the minute details of this nematode and what it can do. But what generally, Anthony, is known to date about its effectiveness in reducing corn rootworm pressure?
Yeah, so to date, with all the trials that they've been putting out, and this has been going on for over 10 years in different locations, but they're seeing that they're able to apply these nematodes to a field, and then these nematodes persist over multiple seasons, even across rotations. So this isn't a matter of applying the nematodes every year. It's a one-time thing, and they're seeing really promising results. So in New Mexico, for instance, and Dr. Shields will touch on a lot of this in more detail, there was a field failing, a continuous cornfield. The BT event was failing in 2018. The producer is taking almost 40% reduction in yield. So they inoculated the field with nematodes the following season. And that season and the second season after that, the producer is back to pre-failure yield. So it had a very significant impact in just one season. So in areas where BT traits are failing, folks are able to get their yield back up.
Has it been evaluated here in Kansas yet, to any extent?
Not yet, and that's a good segue because Dr. Shields is looking for collaborators in Western Kansas, so producers in Western Kansas that are having rootworm control issues. They would like to collaborate with these producers and inoculate their field with nematodes for a long-term study to see if this technique will be as useful in Kansas as it is in New England, as it is in, they've got things in Nebraska and New Mexico. So they're looking to see if it'll be a viable option for Kansas.
And by the way, the individual we're referencing here, again from Cornell University, Dr. Elson Shields, he'll be featured prominently on this webinar. Before we get to that, how are these introduced, the mechanics of it?
Over the last several years, they have experimented with quite a few application techniques. They've all been successful, but most recently they've found that these nematodes can be applied directly through the pivot. So they're recommending that out here in Kansas, they would recommend producers apply these nematodes through the pivot. They basically get a large container of live nematode solution and sprinkle it out through the pivot in about 12 to 14 hours.
Wow. Convenient enough, then, it would sound. Yeah. What are the details of this webinar, then? And this will be an opportunity for producers to get information directly from the original source on these nematodes as a biological control for corn rootworm.
Correct. So, yeah, this free webinar is going to be occurring February 23rd, starting at 9:30 a.m. I expect Dr. Shields will discuss the matter for about an hour. So he's going to be speaking about the biology of nematodes, how they came to be used for rootworm control in general to begin with. He'll explain, like we were just talking about, how they're applied to the field. Importantly, what the cost is associated with the application of these nematodes. Folks always want to know about that. And he'll discuss their long-term persistence in the trials that they've been running, and he'll be, presenting actual data from trials that are ongoing across the corn-growing regions. And
there'll be a chance for interaction between participants and Dr. Shields, and it'll be a good conversation there, if you will.
Exactly. We're going to leave plenty of time for questions. And then again, interested producers that might be having corn rootworm control issues can contact Dr. Shields directly through the webinar.
We'll talk about pre-registering in just a second. But just to pull this together, your take on this, Anthony, looking at the Kansas corn production perspective, this has promise. It's an affordable approach that shows effectiveness, do you think?
Yes, this is a really promising new tool. So from what all the data that they're getting, it points to the fact that these nematodes can be an effective tool when used in tandem with other control techniques, such as BT corn. And so what's going on is these nematodes will be able to kill rootworm larvae that are not succumbing to BT toxins below ground. And so that'll be preventing the emergence of resistant adults that'll continue to spread resistance above ground. And so in effect, these nematodes will actually be also helping to preserve the efficacy of BT toxins in regions where they're still effective. So potentially a great new addition to corn rootworm control tool belt.
Great complement to existing technology, existing approaches to dealing with this pest. How might a grower or anybody else who wants to take this webinar in register for it then, Anthony?
Well, recently there was an agronomy e-update that came out with details on this just last week, and there is a link to click and register for that meeting, and you'll get an invitation to join. And then you could contact me directly as well, Zukoff at ksu.edu, and I can email you that link as well.
I'll give you Anthony's email address again in just a second to refresh you on that. It is taking place starting at 9:30 in the morning on February the 23rd. That is a Wednesday. It is a free webinar being hosted by K-State Research and Extension, focusing on this new method for control of the corn rootworm, employing these nematodes, which will feed on the rootworm larvae, and showing as a great addition to the arsenal against this pest. Take part in this. Anthony, thank you for briefing us on the technology itself and the webinar, and the best of luck with the program.
Thank you very much.
Anthony Zukoff with us, Extension Associate in Entomology for K-State. He is stationed in Southwest Kansas for the university. Contact Anthony to find out more about pre-registering for this webinar. Zukoff, that's Azukoff, at ksu.edu. If you, as he says, also go to the Agronomy e-Update newsletter dated this past Thursday, the 27th of January, you can find a link directly to that registration site. Go to agronomy.ksu.edu to access that newsletter. We'll be back with more on Agriculture Today. Agriculture Today continues now, and for you swine producers, a reminder about a great informational opportunity upcoming this next Tuesday, February the 8th, here on the Kansas State University campus. It's the annual Swine Profitability Conference. And to fill us in on what they've put together in the way of a program this year, K-State Research and Extension animal scientist Joel DeRouchey, one of the organizers of this program. You and your cohorts are always quite proud of what you come up with here, Joel, and the 2022 edition is no exception.
Yes, thanks, Eric, for having me on. And again, we'd like to welcome and have anybody associated with the swine industry attend our Swine Profitability Conference February 8th here at the K-State campus. And this means really unique. We spend a lot of time doing research, extension work with producers. This is a conference where we're able to bring in a vast number of speakers to really talk about the swine business side of operations. We have those that assist producers, but we also have a number of producers themselves that'll be visiting to share their experiences and how they see their pork production systems going forward.
We have quite a diverse program as we walk through it here. It'll get going the morning of the 8th around 9 o'clock with registration, coffee, and donuts, and then the program gets going. You've brought in somebody to give a wide overview of the global meat and pork industries.
Yes, Joe Kearns, who's the CEO and founder of Partners in Production Agriculture based in Ames, Iowa. Joe is well known in the swine industry, been involved for many years helping producers with their risk management strategies, their business operations, and him and his group do a number of engagement activities like this on this upcoming year, but beyond that in terms of market prices, pork outlook, pork demand, and supply. And that really helps us, and we lead off the program with him first there at 9:45 to really help set the stage as we get into the other discussion of other speakers. Also throughout the day, we have 3 different talks directly related to different swine businesses. This year we have Tim Schwartz and Dr. Annie Lerner from Schwartz Farms that are actually based in Sleepy Eye, Minnesota. They have a large family operation there in Minnesota where they have a farrow-to-finish operation. But also they're like many other swine producers that have been looking at expanding their sow herds orchards in Kansas. And in fact, they're under current construction of a new sow farm here in Kansas. In the past several years, there's been other operations that have done that as well. And Kansas has a lot of opportunity for sow farms because of the biosecurity, the distance to other swine farms. And they're going to talk a little bit about their family business and then why they looked at Kansas as an expansion opportunity for their particular operation.
So that really ought to be an instructional topic there, as that family will talk of its expansion into Kansas. But you also have a practitioner on board to talk about the health side of things.
Yeah, Dr. Darrell Olson of Audubon Manning Veterinary Clinic there in Audubon, Iowa. He is a DVM, a well-known swine veterinarian, and he works with a number of swine producers. Him and he has a large clientele with other veterinarians in his swine business. And he's going to visit about what he's seeing in other parts of the U.S. and what he's been helping producers with their business planning, their projections, and how to continue to make their operations practical in other areas of the Midwest besides Kansas. So we're hoping to get his information and bring back and use in our various Kansas operations. We also are featuring this year the Leon and Janice Dunn family of St. John, Kansas. Each year we have a Kansas pork producer family tell their story, and their story is quite fascinating. It's a multi-generation operation there at St. John, not only in swine but in other livestock and cropping operations. And they're going to give an overview of their history and how they're incorporating that next generation and potentially future beyond that into their family operation. And we look forward to Leon and Janice visiting with the crowd about their particular swine farm.
So the story that the Dunns of Stafford County will share will be most worthwhile for producers attending. And you have a couple of K-State's own on the program to discuss career opportunities in the swine industry.
Yes, we, along with the swine operations that are able to hire graduates of Kansas State, we also have a large industry presence from the allied industry that comes into this conference as well. So we're highlighting Dr. Cassie Jones, who is our teaching coordinator in the Animal Science Department. She's going to give an overview of some of the undergraduate programs and opportunities that businesses can tap into our talent pool and the number of internships and where our students go and where they've come from. Also, Dr. Jason Woodworth, who spends a lot of time training graduate students, so primarily in the swine area as well as feed safety. He's going to overview where a number of those students end up and how they impact our Kansas pig farms through nutrition and other services that they can then have that impact. So what we want to do is talk about the teaching program and the opportunities that are out there for students, that where they're going, but also to get feedback from our Kansas swine producers as well as the industry that supports them of where we can continue to improve to provide them with talent for the future.
Well, the program is put together expressly for producers, Joel, but anybody involved with the swine production sector is invited. Allied industry, most anybody can benefit from this, can they not?
Yes, and we have a number of industry groups that are sponsors of this event. We certainly are main sponsors, the Kansas Pork Association. Tim Stroda and the board always are very supportive of this to keep the costs low for producers and industry to attend. And we have a large industry presence at this meeting as well.
It's a great program for you swine producers and others with an interest in the hog industry to take in. It's set for this coming Tuesday, the 8th. Here on the Kansas State University campus. Fill us in on the venue and the other registration details, if you would.
Yes, we have the full information available on our website at ksuswine.org, where you can register and get the full program information. This event is held at the Stanley Stout Center, which is just north of the main KSU campus. This is where we've held this event the last several years, and easy to get to right here close to campus. So again, full information is available at ksuswine.org, and it's held at the Stanley Stout facility here in the Animal Science Department.
Again, $50 per participant. That includes all the proceedings and the lunch on site, very important component to all of that. And it's a great time for producers to visit amongst themselves as well, Joel, as we've talked of in the past.
Yes, we have time. We have plenty of time in for breaks and over the lunch hour. Tim Stroda with the Kansas Pork Association will also be giving a legislative update of anything happening in Topeka, of things that our swine producers should be aware of as well, but plenty of time for producers to interact with themselves.
Excellent. It is the 32nd Swine Profitability Conference at Kansas State University coming up this Tuesday. Joel, thanks for the preview of it, and good luck with the program.
Thank you, Eric.
Joel DeRouchey, animal scientist with K-State Research and Extension. As he says, you can go to ksuswine.org for all the particulars on the program and to follow up with registration so they can get a head count for the meal, which will take place on site. ksuswine.org. And while you're at that site, you might pick up on the other informational resources they feature there. Just about anything you'd like to know about swine nutrition can be accessed. The latest swine nutrition guide is posted there. Premix and diet recommendations, feed safety resources, various calculators and tools, and more. They've all the information published from previous swine days and a link to quite a wide variety of swine informational podcasts. Might want to check into that. All of this at ksuswine.org out of Kansas State University. And taking us up to the break, want to fill in a few more of the details on something we brought up with K-State's Dale Blassie yesterday. They have finalized the agenda for the 2022 K-State Cattlemen's Day, again set for Friday, March the 4th at Weber Hall and Arena here on the campus. Just a couple of the featured sessions there. In the afternoon, they've invited in from the University of Oklahoma School of Meteorology, Jeff Becerra. He'll be talking about what's up with the weather, the extremes, and the outlook, as per that premier weather center that he comes from. Also, there'll be personnel from the Kansas Highway Patrol talking about the rules of the road for Kansas farmers and ranchers. And a full lineup of research updates from K-State Research and Extension folks. The trade show on site and the Legacy Bull Sale to immediately follow the Cattlemen's Day program at the Stanley Stout Center. At last count, they're planning on auctioning off 40 feed efficiency-tested bulls, 20 Angus, 10 Simmental, 10 Hereford, and 41 females, 20 fall-bred females, and 21 commercial heifers. Sale catalog now available at asi.ksu.edu/legacy sale. But as for Cattlemen's Day proper, they are taking pre-registrations now, $25 per person. That does cover, of course, the smoked brisket lunch and all the proceedings. That is, if you pre-register before February the 25th. To get that done, go to ksubeef.org. ksubeef.org. Cattlemen's Day 2022 here at K-State on Friday, March the 4th. We'll return with more in a moment here on Agriculture Today. We're back now on Agriculture Today. And for this week's horticulture segment follow-up on a topic that we've been discussing the past couple of weeks, that is starting garden transplants from seed. Today, why that might not have succeeded, that process. Joining us is Gregg Eyestone, Riley County Extension horticulture agent. In fact, Gregg, on the most recent K-State Garden Hour webinar yesterday, discussed starting those transplants and some do's and don'ts there. Gregg, what you're encountering here is questions from folks who have given this a shot. They've tried to start those transplants from seed indoors, and they didn't achieve germination, and there might be a selection of reasons for that.
Yeah, there's numerous things that can go wrong in the process, and maybe many of them are out of your hands. So one thing is making sure you have viable seed. So sometimes our seed kind of peters out and there's no life left in them. You can either try the process of putting them in the media and keeping them moist and seeing how they go, or you can do kind of a seed experiment. Put 10 seeds in a moist paper towel, put them in a plastic bag, and put them in a warm place and see if any of them germinate. You'll get a percentage that do, hopefully, and so then you kind of know, well, it wasn't my fault. It was the seed that was worn out and it wasn't successful.
Is there a general shelf life of garden seeds then?
There is. So some may last only a year. The one that comes to mind is onion seeds. Generally speaking, you need to start those fresh each year. But some may last 3 years, and it depends really on how they're stored or kept. Cool, dry spot is the best place to store those. Otherwise, just purchase new viable seed that you know. And on those seed packets, they usually have what's called a germ percentage, germination. And so you'll see if it's 60, 80, 90%, which would be ideal. So you have success starting off at the beginning.
Allowing enough time for germination then. Again, what are the standards there?
Yeah, so there's quite a variety of days it takes for different seeds to start. Some of them can maybe 3 or 4 days. You have the warm temperatures and get them going. But some of them may require a much longer time frame. And that may be because of the seed coat on it. So some of them may have a very tough, hard seed coat that we do what's called scarification. So that's just softening up that seed coat so that it can go ahead and sprout for you. Different ways of doing that, and it's probably you need to do a little research on your particular crop that you're trying to start. Some of them you may just need to file the seed coat a little bit, make it a little thinner so that it can sprout. Sometimes we use what's called a boiling method, that we put them in some boiling water that softens that seed coat. So again, this is probably if there's a particular crop that you're trying to get started that you want to do a little research to see what's the kind of preferred method to allow that seed to go ahead and start to break through the coating so that it works for you.
We visited in previous conversations about temperature and light in which those transplants are being started.
Yeah, so the temperature is going to allow you to have a little more rapid germination. I think the rule of thumb is around 70 degrees, but there can be some differences. Many of our commercial seed companies will have that information maybe on the seed pack that you purchase or online that you can look those temperature ranges up. And on the seed packet or maybe on the website, there's going to be information whether it needs to be planted very deeply or shallow. Particularly, some of them need light to be able to reach that seed to germinate. Light can play a factor on waking that seed up and getting it going.
Again, you can achieve good transplant starts through some of the tips that Gregg has offered here. And Gregg, you covered a great deal of this and more in that Garden Hour webinar taking place yesterday, and that is recorded and online for anybody who'd like to go back and review that information, right?
Absolutely, and of course, reach out to your local extension office. They can provide the information as well.
It's as easy as searching for K-State Garden Hour online. Gregg, thank you, as always.
It's been my pleasure.
Gregg Eyestone with us. He is the Riley County Extension Horticulture Agent on this week's Horticulture segment, rounding out our Thursday edition. Thanks for listening. Eric Atkinson for Agriculture Today. This is the K-State Radio Network.